This happened a few weeks ago. I was 30 and spent most nights gaming with friends online. Living alone, I sometimes felt lonely, but chatting kept me connected. One night, I logged into our game. Everything seemed normal. I joined the voice chat and we all joked like usual. Then out of nowhere, the chat glitched. The sound cut out and my screen flickered. I looked at my friends' faces. They looked confused just like me. A chilling thought crept in. Suddenly, weird messages started appearing on my screen. They were threatening, like someone knew us too well. My heart raced, but I brushed it off. Maybe it was just a bad connection. The next few days got weirder. My buddy Nick texted me about strange messages on his account. I thought it was just a prank. Then Sarah reached out. Someone hacked her email and shared secrets we thought were safe. That felt real and scary. We grew distant after that. I noticed anxiety in our voices during calls. It wasn't just me feeling off. I wanted to understand what was happening. Each night, I sat at my desk, fingers hovering over my keyboard. I felt cold sweats down my back. I searched for patterns in the messages, but nothing made sense. It felt like a shadow was playing games with us. I even visited tech forums, but they had no answers. I felt like I was in way over my head. One evening, while gaming, Jessie froze mid-sentence. I thought she was having connection issues. I waited, but her face turned pale. "Jake, I just got one of those messages. The same one Nick got." My stomach twisted. What did that mean for the rest of us? Our calls turned into whispers. I was scared. I kept wondering if one of us was behind this. We talked less and less. The hesitations in our voices were telling, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. At night, dread hung in the air. I stayed up late, staring at my screen. I had to know who was behind things. Then the chat glitched again. A message popped up on my screen. "Why are you still searching?" Fear shot through me. I turned to look out into the darkness of my apartment. I wasn't alone anymore. I felt a chill run down my spine. The walls seemed to close in. I tried to shake the feeling off, but the message replayed in my head. I thought it was a prank, but deep down, I knew it felt real. The fear twisted in my gut. Each night after that, I avoided calls. I couldn't help feeling like my friends were hiding something. But what if the danger was closer than I thought? What if one of us was not just searching but watching? I never stopped questioning everything that happened. I just wanted to know the truth. The days blurred together after that. I stayed glued to forums, searching for someone else with our experiences. Every click felt like a risk. The more I read, the more isolated I became. I barely spoke with Nick, Sarah, and Jessie. Each chat felt strained. I didn't even want to see their faces. Who could I trust? One night, I decided to take action. I thought if I investigated deeper, I could find answers and protect myself. I opened my email again and looked for any suspicious messages. Nothing stood out, but I decided to search through the metadata of past messages. My hands trembled as I clicked on tabs, following links and digging for clues. It felt like swimming in murky waters. Then, I found something odd. An unfamiliar login location appeared on my account. It highlighted a city I had never been to, nowhere near where I lived. Panic tightened around my chest. I checked Nick and Sarah's accounts. They had similar traces. It was as if someone was orchestrating a grand arrangement, following us, taunting us from the shadows. The next day, I called Nick. "I've got a lead," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But before I could explain, he interrupted. "Jake, I think we should meet. There is something I need to show you," he said, his voice low and urgent. My heart raced. Was he in danger too? We arranged to meet at a coffee shop. On the way there, I felt each car pass as a potential threat. My mind buzzed with fear. What if he was a part of it? What if I was walking into a trap? I shook my head, trying to rid myself of the growing paranoia. When I arrived, I spotted Nick sitting at a table in the back. He looked as anxious as I felt, glancing around. I sat across from him and he leaned in close, lowering his voice. "There's something we need to do. You're not going to believe this." Before he could explain, I noticed something behind him. A figure at the entrance of the cafe, dressed in dark clothing with a hood pulled tight. My stomach dropped. Their face was hidden, but I felt a chill crawl down my spine. They stared right at me. "Jake, focus," Nick said, shaking my shoulder. "Look at this." He pulled out his phone, showing me a series of messages. They were screenshots from his own account. Someone had sent him a direct threat. "They know I'm meeting you," he said, panic edging his voice. I scanned the cafe, searching for any sign of the figure. But the entrance was empty. I felt lightheaded. What was happening? "Nick, what is going on? This doesn't make sense." "After the message I received, I did some digging of my own," he said. "And I found something that connects all of us. It's bigger than just some hacking. It's real." Just as he finished, the lights flickered overhead. A sudden silence enveloped the room. I could hear my heart pounding. Then everything went dark. I jolted upright. The whisper of murmurs faded into thick silence, shattered only by the frantic clicking of keys at the barista counter. My heart raced, and I reached for Nick, but the table was empty. "Nick?" I called out, my voice shaky. Panic clawed at my insides. The darkness engulfed the room. I peered blindly into the blackness, straining to hear any sound: footsteps, whispers, anything. Then a dim light flickered back on, revealing the cafe as if the shadows had pulled back reluctantly. I blinked and rubbed my eyes, desperately searching for Nick. I caught sight of him at the far end, standing near the door with the same figure I had spotted earlier. The hooded figure was now closer, and from this angle, I could see a flash of something metallic in their hand, the glint of a knife. "Nick, get away from them!" I yelled, but my voice sounded far away, drowned by the rising panic that twisted through me. Nick turned, his eyes wide with alarm, but it was too late. The figure lunged at him, and before I could react, Nick stumbled back, colliding against a table. "Jake!" he shouted, his plea sharp with fear. I leaped to my feet, adrenaline surging through me. Bystanders were frozen in shock, eyes glued to the scene unfolding. I dashed toward Nick, each stride fueled by a mix of fear and urgency. But as I reached him, the figure darted out of the cafe, leaving a trail of chaos behind. Nick was on the ground, gasping for breath. I knelt beside him, panic swirling in my chest. "Are you okay?" He nodded quickly but looked shaken. "I think they were just trying to scare me," he managed to say. "But they knew, Jake. They knew everything." "Everything?" I whispered, dread settling in. "Yeah, they mentioned you by name in the message. They knew we were meeting." He shivered, rubbing his arms as if trying to erase the chill that lingered. I froze, processing his words. "But how did they know? We didn't tell anyone. Maybe someone else watching us." "I don't know who or why," he replied, panic creeping back into his voice. "But they have our information, our connections. It's real. You need to be careful." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the back of the shop. I jumped, instinctively glancing back at the source. Another figure this time, a woman in the same dark attire, emerged from the shadows, clutching a laptop. Her eyes scanned the room, locking onto me. "They can't keep track of all of us," Nick whispered. "We need to warn Sarah and Jesse." The woman's gaze shifted from me to Nick, a twisted grin spreading across her face. "Too late," she said, her voice cold and mocking. My heart raced as I realized the implication. Someone was already on to them. Someone was always watching us. This was only just the beginning. "Jake, we need to go. Now." Nick grabbed my arm, and together we rushed toward the exit. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being hunted, the walls closing in. I turned to look back one last time, and the woman was gone, but the tension lingered in the air. I felt it creeping into my bones, a whisper warning me that this was not over. As we stumbled into the street, my phone buzzed violently in my pocket, and I froze. I pulled it out, and my heart sank. A new message blinked ominously, just 3 words. "I'm coming for you." The streetlights flickered overhead as Nick and I hurried away from the cafe, my mind racing. The message on my phone felt like a noose tightening around my throat. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "First, we need to find somewhere safe. Somewhere we can think," Nick replied, his eyes darting as if expecting the hooded figure to leap from the shadows. We turned down a quiet side street, the faint sounds of the city fading into the background. I struggled to catch my breath. Why would they target us? We haven't done anything wrong. I don't know, Nick stated, frustration creeping into his tone. But it's like they've been watching us for a while. It's not just about today. I felt a chill run through me. What do you mean for a while? How could anyone? Before I could finish, I noticed something odd up ahead, a flickering light coming from the abandoned warehouse on the corner. Nick, look, I pointed. We approached cautiously, the light growing brighter with each step. As we got closer, the source of the glow turned out to be a laptop set up on a crate outside the warehouse. The screen displayed jagged lines of code, scrolling like a river of green digital ink. A sinking feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. This has to be a trap, I said, my instincts screaming. Maybe it's a clue, Nick said, unable to suppress his curiosity. They're taunting us, or luring us, I shot back. Let us just back away. But before we could retreat, the screen blinked fiercely, and words began to form on it. I know you're there, a message typed itself out. You can't hide. What the hell? I exclaimed, stumbling back. Who is this? Nick shouted at the screen, anger spilling out. What do you want from us? The machine responded almost instantly. Your secrets are mine to take. You've been warned. Secrets? What secrets? I demanded, my heart racing again. Stop, Nick. I grabbed his arm, but he was already stepping closer to read the next line that materialized. You can't run from the truth. Everything felt surreal. I had a million questions swirling in my mind. Who was behind this and how did they know us? Was this the same person who had attacked Nick? As if sensing my unease, the light on the laptop flickered again, and then abruptly shut off, plunging us into darkness. My instincts told me to flee, but just as I turned, a door creaked open from the warehouse. Jake, Nick whispered sharply, his voice trembling. Someone's inside. I glanced back, and my heart dropped. A figure stepped into the light spilling from the warehouse, wearing a mask that obscured their face. They pointed straight at us. You shouldn't have come here, they said, their voice dripping with malice. I grabbed Nick's hand, and in that moment, we turned and sprinted down the street, fear propelling us forward. The threat was no longer just an abstract idea. It was real and it was chasing us. Then everything went dark again. I jolted awake, gasping for air. The alley was cold, the cement hard beneath me, and I could still feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins. I squinted up, disoriented, as the city was bathed in the hazy glow of dawn. Nick lay beside me, his face pale and his brow furrowed with worry. Jake, what happened? He murmured, rubbing his eyes. I don't know. We were running, I stammered, trying to piece together the fragments of my memory. The warehouse, the masked figure, everything felt like a nightmare. I glanced around, scanning the dim light inching into the alley. We need to get out of here, I said, my voice shaking. There was something about this place that made every instinct scream at me to leave. Nick nodded, still looking rattled. Did we actually sleep here? It looks like it, I replied, a knot in my stomach. The street beyond the alley was empty, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. Check your phone, he urged, pulling out his own. I fumbled for it, bringing it up to my face. A notification chimed, and my heart raced as I read the message. Meet me at the diner, 8 a.m. sharp. Or else, what the hell? I whispered. It was from an unknown number, but the sense of urgency made it clear. This was not just a message. It felt like a demand. Who is it? Nick asked, leaning closer to read over my shoulder. I don't know. It just says or else. I swallowed hard. Does this sound familiar? Nick shook his head, the worry lines deepening. We've got to figure out what's going on, Jake. This isn't just a random threat. It's connected to what happened last night. What if it's a trap? I said, now fully alert. The fear I thought had settled was bubbling back up. We can't ignore it. Someone wants us to show up. Either we find out who they are or we stay in the dark, not knowing what they're capable of. Against my better judgment, I nodded. Let us get some coffee. Then we'll head to the diner. We stood up and made our way to the main street, the sun climbing higher and slowly burning off the morning fog. Our surroundings felt eerily normal, a stark contrast to the chaos that had unfolded. As we approached the diner, a sense of dread washed over me. I scanned the windows, looking for any sign of trouble. The interior was bustling, but one booth caught my eye. A figure in a dark hoodie sat with their back towards us, their head bent low. "Do you see that?" I pointed discreetly. "Yeah, it could be them," Nick said. He was tense beside me, every muscle coiled. "Let us go in, but we stick together." We stepped through the door, the familiar smell of coffee greeting us, but all my senses were on high alert. The bell above the door echoed, the sound somehow ominous. We advanced slowly, and as I approached the booth, my heart pounded in my chest. Then the figure turned, revealing the familiar features of our friend Alex. My breath caught in my throat. "Alex?" He looked at us, his expression unreadable. "You guys got my message." A new wave of confusion hit me. "What is going on? Why were you at the warehouse?" Before he could answer, a shadow flickered outside the diner window, catching my attention. As I turned to look, I saw the outline of someone, felt dangerously close, and my heart raced again. A truth crept back into my consciousness, a truth I hadn't fully recognized until now. We were in deep, and it wasn't over yet. "Jake," Nick said quietly, "we're being watched." I tried to shake off the unease, but it lingered like a thick fog. "Let us sit," I said, attempting to focus on Alex. He slid over, making room in the booth. As I settled in, I studied his face, searching for answers. "What do you mean we got your message? What's going on?" Alex rubbed the back of his neck, his eyes flickering to the window. "I've been trying to reach you guys. The thing is, it's more serious than I thought." "What happened at the warehouse?" Nick pressed. "I saw something I shouldn't have." Alex's voice dropped to a whisper. "I thought it was just a drug deal, but it wasn't. There were people there, Jake. Important people." My stomach twisted at the implication. "What kind of important people?" I recognized one of them. He hesitated, glancing nervously at the diner staff who bustled about. "They're connected to the attacks we've seen online, the ones targeting our friends." I felt a chill. The talk about incidents that had spiraled out of control on social media and forums played at the back of my mind. "You think they're after us because of that?" "Maybe," he said, his voice thick with uncertainty. "Whatever they're involved with, it's dangerous. They saw us. I was sure we were being followed after I left." "Great," Nick muttered, crossing his arms. "So we're targets now?" A wave of helplessness crashed over me. The pressure of the unknown was suffocating. Suddenly, the bell above the diner door rang loudly, pulling my attention. A man walked in, scanning the room, his eyes landing on us. My heart sank when I noticed the dark glasses he wore. "Who's that?" I whispered, my voice sharp. "I don't know," Alex replied, but the fear in his eyes mirrored my own. The man took a slow step toward our booth, his gaze locked onto Alex. Before any of us could react, he pulled out a phone, pointing it directly at us. "Get out," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "Trust me." "What?" I blinked in confusion. "Why should we trust you? Just do it." "You're in serious danger," he growled, taking another step closer. I looked at Nick and Alex, their eyes wide with fear. "We don't have time," the man urged. "They're coming. Now." Adrenaline surged through me again, and I sprang from the booth. "Let us go." We rushed toward the exit, but just as we reached the door, a figure blocked our path. It was the same one I'd seen outside the diner. I froze. Nick grabbed my arm, pulling me back. The threat was palpable. The man in the dark glasses turned to face the newcomer. "You need to leave them alone," he said, his voice tense. The tension escalated as the two men stared each other down, the air thick with hostility. "Get out of my way," the stranger replied, revealing a faint smirk. A shout exploded from the kitchen, followed by the clatter of dishes. Everyone turned toward the commotion, and in that moment of distraction, the dark-glassed man lunged for us. "Run!" he yelled, shoving us back into the diner. I didn't think twice. We bolted toward the rear exit, the cacophony of voices behind us growing louder. That S when I saw it. A black van screeched to a halt outside, doors swinging open. A chilling realization settled in: this was no ordinary escape. The race against whatever was closing in on us had just begun. We burst through the back door, stumbling into the narrow alleyway behind the diner. The smell of grease mingled with the cold air, stinging my lungs. My heart hammered as we sprinted toward the street. "Where do we go?" Nick shouted over his shoulder. Fear twisted his face, and for a brief second, I felt the same confusion that gripped him. "Anywhere but here," I yelled back, trying to keep my panic at bay. The last thing I needed was to crumble in front of them. The man in the dark glasses followed closely. His presence felt both a relief and an additional weight. We dashed past overflowing trash bins and flickering neon lights until we reached the corner. That S where we stopped, catching our breaths. "Who are you?" I demanded, turning to the dark-glassed man. "What's going on?" He jerked his chin toward the street we had just come from. "We don't have time. They'll find you if we don't keep moving." "Who will?" Alex asked, his brow furrowed. I could see the urgency in the man's eyes. "The people after you, the same ones who know about the warehouse. They won't stop until they get what they want." "Which is?" Nick pressed, glancing towards the street. "Your friends. Anyone who's connected to what you've seen or what you know." I swallowed hard. The weight of his words settled into my gut. "What did Alex see?" "The kind of things that don't stay quiet for long," the man replied. "We need to get off the grid." Nick frowned. "And how do you plan to do that?" Before the man could answer, I caught a glimpse of headlights approaching. My pulse raced again. "They're coming. Follow me," he commanded, turning on his heel and taking off down a narrow path between two buildings. We hurried after him, desperation fueling our steps. Even in the shadows, I could feel the weight of my own uncertainty. Did we trust this stranger? Or were we digging ourselves deeper into whatever nightmare Alex had stumbled into? The path opened up to an empty parking lot, surrounded by walls on three sides. I took a shaky breath and quickly scanned for escape routes. "Where to now?" "Get in the van," he pointed, and we froze. There it was, a black van parked beneath a flickering light. It looked out of place, as if it had been waiting for us. "What if it's a trap?" I said, my voice trembling. "How do we know you're not one of them?" The man stepped closer, urgency creeping back into his tone. "You don't. But standing here is a death sentence. You have no time to decide." Panic surged as the headlights we saw earlier swung around the corner. I staggered back, trying to find a way to think through this mess. "Jake!" Alex's voice cut through my haze of fear. I turned to see him edging toward the van. "It's our only shot." The van's side door slid open, and I cursed under my breath. Nick pushed past me and climbed inside. Alex joined him without hesitation. All right, I shouted, sprinting to the door, my heart racing. I jumped in just as the headlights flooded the parking lot. Go, the man shouted, sliding in next to me. The van roared to life as we sped away, the sound of screeching tires echoing behind us. I risked a glance back. The last thing I saw was shadowy figures jumping out of the cars pursuing us. "Who are those people?" I gasped, turning to the man beside me. He took a deep breath. "That's what we need to figure out. But we don't have time." "Figure out what?" Just then, the man pulled out a small device from his pocket, and I felt the urgency rise again. "We're not safe yet." I glanced out the back window, heart sinking. "What do you mean?" But before he could answer, the screen lit up, and I saw a stark reminder of the chaos waiting for us. I found out who they are, but that just made it worse. The device emitted a faint glow, casting eerie shadows on the van's interior. I squinted at the screen as a series of grainy images flickered to life. Faces. Familiar ones. Friends I hadn't spoken to in months. "What is this?" The man in the glasses tapped the screen, and the images froze on a face I recognized instantly. "Jordan. They've been tracking you through everyone connected to the warehouse. They know who your friends are." My heart dropped. "Why? What do they want from us?" "We're walking a tightrope," he said, urgency threading through his voice. "They're trying to eliminate any evidence of what has been uncovered. The warehouse holds secrets they'll do anything to keep hidden." "Secrets?" Alex echoed. His voice was steady, but I could see the uncertainty behind his eyes. "Important ones," the man said. "What your friend saw should have stayed buried. Now it's our problem." A sinking feeling settled in my stomach. "Do they know everything? About us?" "Not yet, but they're closing in. We need to make sure you're off their radar." He hit a button on the device, and the screen switched to a map filled with blinking red dots. "These are potential safe locations." I squinted at the dots, but confusion only deepened the pit in my gut. "What do we do when we get there?" "Lay low. We need to regroup and figure out how to turn the tables." The man glanced towards the front as if looking for a sign. "But it won't be easy. They'll come for you soon. I won't let you be caught. Can't we just go to the police?" Nick suggested, skepticism woven through his words. "No." The man shook his head emphatically. "They're involved. You can't trust anyone outside this van right now." As we drove on through the winding streets, I could feel the tension thickening in the air. Thoughts swirled in my head. My own friends were in danger because of us, and I felt helpless. The weight of the situation settled heavily on my chest, making it hard to breathe. "Do you know what they'll do to them?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The man's jaw clenched. "I know enough. They'll use any means necessary to silence them." A chill ran down my spine. I could picture my friends, caught in a web they were oblivious to while I was sitting in this van, running away. "We can't just leave them." The man met my gaze, eyes serious behind his glasses. "That's exactly why we're in this position, to protect them. But we have to be smart." Just as he finished speaking, the van hit a bump, and the device slipped from his hand, clattering onto the floor. In that instant, everything seemed to shift. My heart raced as I noticed a red dot appear on the screen, a new marker blinking ominously. "Guys, look!" I screamed, pointing. "It's tracking us," the man said, panic creeping into his voice. Then, everything went dark. The van's lights flickered and died as a loud bang resonated from the back. I held my breath, waiting for the inevitable chaos to unfold. The driver cursed and slammed the gas pedal, but the van skidded to a halt. In that moment, I realized we may have run straight into their trap. "Get down," the man barked, reaching for the door. But before I could move, the sound of shattering glass echoed around us. The world spun as I braced for the unknown, knowing whatever came next could change everything. The van shook from the impact, and I felt the jolt travel through my body. My heart raced like a wild animal trying to escape. I ducked down, pressing my back against the cold metal of the van's interior. I could hear the muffled voices of the driver and the man in glasses, but fear drowned out their words. "Watch out," I heard Alex yell. A sudden crash erupted through the rear window. I turned my head just in time to see a shadow dart past. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just the tracking device being destroyed. They had found us. The man in glasses threw open the passenger door and leaped out. "Stay down and follow my lead," he shouted back. I glanced around at the others. Nick's face was pale, and Alex looked ready to bolt. "What do we do?" I whispered, my voice barely above a breath. "We stick together," Alex replied, gripping the edge of the seat. The sound of footsteps approached outside. I could hear them. They were shouting, voices rough and demanding. I felt like a deer in the headlights, caught between panic and decision. "Now!" the man in glasses yelled, his voice sharp. I saw him dart behind a nearby dumpster. "Come on," Alex urged, pulling me and Nick toward the back of the van. We all squeezed through the narrow space and hit the ground, feeling the gravel bite into our skin. "Stay low," the man commanded, peering around the corner. I couldn't see what he was looking at, but the tension in his posture made it clear he was watching for danger. The muffled shouting grew louder. My mind raced. Would they find us? I closed my eyes, wishing for an escape that felt impossible. Then it happened. A sharp crack rang out, followed by another. Someone was firing a gun. My stomach twisted as the footsteps grew frantic. My heart hammered in my chest. "Get to the alley," the man ordered, and we scrambled to our feet, hearts pounding as we darted behind the dumpster. The alley was dark, the shadows feeling like a refuge and a prison at once. I could hear the voices growing distant far enough to give us a moment of reprieve. But then I remembered the device. "Wait, what about the tracking device?" I blurted out, my mind racing. "We'll deal with that later," the man said, glancing back toward the street. "We need to regroup first." "Regroup?" Nick echoed, incredulous. "Where? They'll just find us again." "Shush," the man hissed. "We have to keep moving." The nervous energy in my stomach shifted to resolve. We couldn't let any more of our friends be dragged into this. I stepped closer to the man. "How do we turn the tables? What's the next step?" He studied me for a moment, eyes narrowed. "I have a line on someone who knows more. If we can reach them, it might give us the edge we need." "Where do we find them?" I asked, already pulling out my phone. "Back to the warehouse. It's a risk, but it might be our best shot." Just then, a new sound cut through the chaos, a car engine revving up. My heart dropped as headlights swept across the alley. They were coming for us. "Run!" the man yelled, and in that moment, everything shifted. I knew we had to make a choice. Would we run toward the danger or fight to uncover the truth? I felt adrenaline surge through me as we sprinted deeper into the shadows, the echoes of pursuit ringing in our ears. Whatever lay ahead, it was now or never. As we darted down the alley, the sounds of pursuit echoed behind us. My heart raced, each beat rivaling the pounding footsteps that chased us. I could smell the dampness of the air mixed with the scent of grit and desperation. "This way," the man in glasses shouted, veering left toward a narrower passage that led deeper into the heart of the city. We skidded past a stack of crates, the shadows swallowing us whole just in time for the headlights behind to lose track of our escape. I didn't dare look back. Every instinct in me screamed to keep moving, to stay ahead of whatever threat was on our tail. "Keep going," Nick urged breathlessly beside me, grasping my arm for support. Our breaths came fast, mixing with the adrenaline pulsing through my veins. I was acutely aware of my surroundings, the rough walls flanking us, the distant noises of the city, and the weight of urgency hanging in the air. The man in glasses took the lead and guided us into an open, empty parking lot. I hated the feeling that we were sitting ducks but knew there was little choice. The man turned to us, urgency flashing in his eyes. "We need to access the warehouse. Stick to the shadows and stay close." "The warehouse?" I echoed, dread creeping back. "SNT that where they are," he cut me off, clearly impatient. "But it's also where we can find answers. We have to risk it." Nick looked at me, uncertainty thick in his eyes. "What if they're waiting for us? What if it's a trap?" "Their plan hinges on us being too afraid to act," the man interjected, his voice low but steady. "If we don't do this, we might lose everything, your friends, even yourselves." I felt the weight of his words. The memory of Alex's frightened face flashed through my mind. "Fine," I said, resolute despite the unease. "Let us do it." We hurried back down the dimly lit streets, shadows dancing in the corners of my vision. The closer we got to the warehouse, the more my mind spun with fears, doubts, and what-ifs. Stepping into the site, I was immediately hit by the familiar chill of the harbor air and the damp smell of concrete. The warehouse loomed large in front of us, its windows boarded up, shadows casting eerie shapes across the structure. "Stay quiet," the man whispered as he led us toward a side entrance. As we approached, my heart pounded like a drum, amplifying the fear coursing through my veins. A faint noise from inside made me freeze. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He nodded, putting a finger to his lips, and then edged the door open slightly. Cold air greeted us as the creak of the door cut through the silence. Inside, the dim illumination revealed a few scattered crates and suspiciously quiet corners. Just as I started to breathe easier, a low voice echoed from the back. "I told you to stay away." It was thick with authority. I recognized it immediately. A shiver ran down my back. It was the voice of someone who had been controlling the strings from the shadows far too long. "This is a bad idea," Nick murmured under his breath, his frustration evident. "Hold on," the man in glasses urged, stepping fully into the warehouse. We followed, but the dread in my gut tightened further. There was too much space, too many hidden places for anyone to lurk, waiting. "Who's there?" The voice called again, sharper this time. I felt every muscle coil as if anticipating a blow. The man stepped into the light filtered through a narrow window. "I'm here to finish what we started." I barely registered Nick's rigid form beside me as a figure stepped out from the shadows, someone I didn't recognize. The individual's face was obscured by the darkness but radiated an unsettling confidence. "They knew you thought you could come back," the figure spoke, a twisted smirk forming. "But you've stirred things up that should have stayed buried. Explain yourself," the man in glasses demanded, rising to the challenge. But before he could finish, the entire warehouse erupted into chaos. Flashing lights filled the grim interior as figures poured in, chasing shadows while yelling out instructions. Confusion erupting on every front. "Run!" I yelled, knowing instinctively we were outnumbered. We dashed back towards the side entrance, frantic adrenaline fueling our escape, but it quickly morphed into an overwhelming sense of urgency as we encountered a wall of figures blocking our way. "In here," the man in glasses shouted, leading us toward a different exit at the rear of the building. As we rushed through, I could see the panic on his face mirroring my own, a reflection of fear, uncertainty, and the realization that we were deeper in than we had ever imagined. Emerging into the alley, I felt a fleeting rush of relief. But as we crossed into the street, I caught a glimpse of the black van parked across the way. "Get in," I urged, panic rising as headlights flashed in the distance and more shadowy figures sprinted towards us. The man in glasses reached for the van door but hesitated, glancing back. "We have to end this. No one left behind." I froze, uncertainty clawing at me. "What do you mean? We can't just escape. They'll keep coming for us. We need to take the fight back to them and find out why they want us." Suddenly, the realization washed over me. This was no longer just about survival. It was about facing the unknown, unraveling the truth behind their threats and our fears. I glanced at Nick and Alex, both of them wide-eyed, waiting for a word, a decision. "Are we in?" I asked, feeling the weight of the moment settle heavily in the air. The man nodded, determination in his stance. Together, I knew it was time to make a choice, to break away from the shadows or continue to let the past haunt us. It felt like we were all standing at a precipice, teetering on the edge of something monumental. "We fight together," I said, my voice unwavering. With adrenaline ticking like a clock in my chest, I steeled myself as we prepared to confront whatever darkness awaited us. A darkness that held secrets I still needed to understand.